this video, which builds on the exercise that is called cost of capital, the three tables for relevering, we'll just write down some notes that are useful for the exams to remember, right? So in the lecture notes, we spend quite a bit of time learning about these three tables. But let's just create an overview here. So you have constant debt, right? You have debt to equity is rebalanced yearly. I'm not writing everything out here. And then you have the debt to equity is rebalanced continuously, right? These were the three cases. Then you're giving a lot of lecture notes, to calculate R star, calculate beta, calculate return on equity, and so on. What I would do, based on previous exams, is that I would not memorize all of it. I would memorize beta equity and return on equity, right? And then because if you can do that and you're willing to take a detour, so you don't go directly for calculating WACC, assumed that we already know, you can always get to R star, right? Which is WACC, assuming that we already know that return on equity is equal to this thing right here. And that WACC is a weighted average of 1 minus T times D over V plus return on equity times E over V. I have at least not tried where if you're willing to maybe actually take this detour, right, that you need to remember the formula for this, right? And it's just a lot, right? Because it's basically adds three extra things out here that you need to remember, right? So what I would do is that I would just remember these things. So let's try to actually write it up here and see if we can reason a bit and make it easier to remember. So beta equity, we have shown the formula that this is beta assets, 1 plus 1 minus T times D over E, like this. And that return on equity is RA plus RA minus RF times 1 minus T D over E. Right, something like this. This is a multiplication time. Good. Then there's this one down here, and I'm jumping down here because that's the other one that is fairly easy. And I just want you to see the similarities here, because I think that's how it becomes easier to remember, is that if you don't look at this as being 6 independent things, but actually look at this as being, there is some similarity in between. So let me show you. Okay, it looks like this. So the first thing I want to say is that in undergraduate level, and also when you read up on Modigliani and Miller, I'm quite sure that you've actually seen this formula before, right? It might be that you don't remember it by heart, but you've probably seen this before. Okay. The beta 1 equity is hopefully somewhat easy to remember because you just have beta assets and it's basically just 1 plus D over E. I'm not saying it's easy, but sort of somewhat, right? It's at least easier to remember than what comes in here. Look at what the difference is between this row and that row. All the difference is just this thing here. The tax term, nothing else. So that means that if you can remember this part here, where debt is rebalanced continuously, then to remember where it's constant, all you need to remember is that you just add this term, the tax term, right? And all of a sudden, I would say, that this one is maybe quite close to already being memorized as you've seen it before. This one is in the easier sort of spectrum of memorizing it. And if you know these two, you basically have these two as well, because just the tax term. And that leaves you with really only having to memorize this horrible looking thing, which is the middle row here, where it's rebalanced yearly. And it's also something that is used very little in practice, right? Because it's so close to this one. right? The results are so close. But basically, in this course, we need to do it. And it then looks like this. 1 plus RF times 1 minus T times that over VL, like this. And I need a bracket more. And then this big one. And then 1 plus or 1 over F. And then here, equity is equal to RA, right? Let me do a big bracket here. RA minus RF times 1 plus tax. And I mean, all of this is in your lecture notes, so I would definitely sort of look there first before you try to memorize my handwriting as such, right? But now you have D over here, and this is also D over E at the end, and then you close the bracket. All right, so I think there's one more bracket here to close, like that. That bracket is closed, that bracket is closed, and then close the final bracket. Actually, here. Yeah, that looks horrible, but then, so basically some rules to remember. Is constant D, the top row, and D over E continuously vary only by the 1 minus T term, right? So with that, you basically just have to memorize this one, as long as you also are willing to take the detour of calculating the work this way instead of going directly for R star, as you also provided with that formula in the lecture notes. Fantastic. Hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks.